Hello, in this video we'll be looking at Dhammapada, chapter 8, Sahasrabhago, verse 7, that's verse 106 in the straight-through consecutive numbering. Mase sahasena yo yajeta satang samang ekanch bhavitatanam muhuttamapi pujaye Sayeva Pujana Sayo Yanche Vasasatang Hutang. I'll call up the text. Oops. Here we are. Mase Sahasena Yoyajeta Satang Samang Ekanch Bhavatatanam Muhuttamapi Pujaye Sayeva Pujana Sayo Yanche Vasasatang Hutang. So, masa is a masculine noun meaning a month. So, mase in a month, or how many times you do it a month, how many times you make your sacrifice per month. If you reduplicate the word, make it mase, that literally in month, that gives the same kind of meaning as in English where we say month in, month out, every single month, month by month. So mase, if he carries on every single month. So the subject of the sentence is yo, whoever. So whoever yajeta sacrifices or would sacrifice, would make a sacrifice. The optative form again, because we're talking not about a particular person doing a particular thing, but generally, if anybody were to do that kind of thing, if anybody were to yoyajeta, whoever would sacrifice, or in English we could say, if anybody were to sacrifice, mase, month in, month out, sahasena, satang samam. Sahasena, satang. In verse 8.4, we have sahasang sahasena, literally 1,000 by 1,000. And in verse 8.4, it's talking about, let me just call it up here. In verse 8.4, it's used as a number, literally 1,000. Here we are, sahasang sahasena, 1,000 by 1,000, meaning the number of people that one might conquer. Yo sahasang sahasena sangame manuse jine. Whoever might conquer 1,000 by 1,000. In English, we could say that, or 1,000 times 1,000 people in battle. When I did the edition of this, when I first did the edition of 8.7 that we're now looking at, I interpreted it in the same way, though I'm now not quite so sure that that's right. I was originally thinking of it as sahasena satang, 100 times 1,000. That's still capable of being right, but the alternative explanation is that the sahasena, look at that separately from satang. So sahasena yajati, literally, he sacrifices with 1,000. It means whatever sacrifice he is making, he gives or offers or sacrifices that times 1,000. So he doesn't just give one gift or whatever to the holy men, he gives 1,000 of them. So rather than doing one unit of merit or one unit of dana, of giving, he gives 1,000. That, I think, is the more likely meaning here. And it's the one that K.R. Norman adopts as well. This is the Norman and Hunuba translation here. So Norman says, if anyone were to sacrifice with 1,000 month by month. So he's done a very literal translation here, with 1,000. You've got to interpret that. What are you doing when you're sacrificing? You are letting something go. You are offering it. But with 1,000 means you only need to do one to make a valid sacrifice. But here you're actually giving 1,000 of them. So yoyajeta satang. So satang samam, for Norman interprets this satang samam as 100 years, which kind of makes sense logically, but I cannot find in the works of reference anything that makes samam mean a year. Sorry, I've lost my grid markers. Oh, I got them back and I've lost them again. Okay. The meaning of satang here, 100, I tend to think is intended to mean 100 years. Samam, sama, cognate with our English word same, generally means same or even or regular. And I think for 100 regularly, regularly without letting go of it, without lapsing, for 100 imply years. So whoever regularly makes 1,000-fold sacrifice every single month regularly for 100 years. The verse is slightly obscure, and well, no, not exactly obscure, but there could be a slightly different interpretation of it. And there's another interpretation, summum as even for 100, meaning even for 100 years, though the Pali Text Society Dictionary doesn't support the translation summum, meaning even for 100 years. So we'll have to leave that as a bit of a mystery, in my mind at least, but the meaning of the verse is clear. Second verse, ekancha bhavitatanam muhuttamapi pujaye. So, first verse, yo yajeta, whoever might sacrifice, meaning if anybody were to make that thousandfold sacrifice month in, month out, regularly for 100 years. Then in the second verse, now we're talking about a different way of doing it. Ekancha bhavitatanam muhuttamapi pujaye. Hang on, I've lost my grid lines here. Let me separate these out for you. Yajeta pujaye. We all know the word puja, meaning the reverence or the worship, and in Buddhist circles, it's used to mean the ceremonial act, ceremonial reverencing. This is the verb form. In Sanskrit, pujayati, Pali pujeti. So you can also have pujayati in Pali. And pujaye is the optative form of that. So the indicative would be pujeti or pujayati, and the optative form pujaye, meaning whoever might offer puja. Muhuttam api. Muhutta means a moment. In Sanskrit, it is muhurta. Let's just call up iPad. Here we are. Muhutta. In Sanskrit, it is muhurta. In Sanskrit, it had a more specialized meaning, certainly in the Vedas. It means a moment, but it was often used to define a moment of particular importance, as for example an astrological moment, a particular conjunction of stars and planets. So you pick your muhurta, the precise moment at which it's auspicious to do something. In later language, it may even have been in the early language, not quite sure, but in the later language, it also adopted a broader meaning, just a moment. As here in this verse, muhuttam api, even for one moment, in contrast, if somebody carries on making these sacrifices for 100 years, or by contrast, somebody who muhuttam api, even just for a moment, not 100 years, pujaye, reverences the person who has realized his own self, or has developed his own self. So now this ekancha, which is the ekam cha, ekancha, ekam one. This could go with bhavitatanam, or it could also go with muhuttam. Grammatically, it could do either. Normally in Pali, it goes as close as it can to the word it governs. So I would tend to say ekancha bhavitatanam. But if he were to pujaye, offer reverence, just to one person who has developed his atta, who's developed himself, muhutamapi, even for one moment. So it's, if he just offers reverence, even for one moment, to a person who has developed himself, Sayeva Pujana Seyo. Pujana is a verbal noun. We have puja is the verb. Puja, let me call up. Oops. Here we are. Can we really talk about a root puj? In fact, we have the noun puja, and it's from puja that we get the verb pujayati. So maybe it's not quite right to talk about there being an acknowledged root puj. Maybe there's not. Anyway, we have puja. So in Theravada Buddhism, you often have the ceremony that is called a puja, which is the name given to a particular ceremony. Pujana, what is the difference between puja and pujana? There's a certain overlap between them, but pujana is more the act of doing something. The emphasis there in pujana more on the action, more on the verb. So the puja is the name of the ceremony, or a more general word meaning offering reverence, whereas the pujana is the specific activity of doing it. So what is being said here is that, Sayeva Pujana, that act of doing puja, that offering of reverence, Seyo, is better. Sa, so pujana is a feminine noun. Sa, that. Sa pujana, that offering of reverence. The y is inserted here euphonically, Sayeva Pujana. It has no grammatical function. It could equally correctly have been Sa-eva, is just euphonically inserted. Eva is emphatic here. So that, like the emphatic, that one single activity of reverencing, Sayeva Puja, that very single act, Seyo is better. Yanche, literally which if. It's just a Pali idiomatic way of saying than. Yanche yassa satang hutang. So yanche vassa satang hutang. Than vassa a year satang 100 hutang sacrifice. This can be interpreted in one of two ways. It effectively comes back to the same meaning, but grammatically, this vassa satang hutang. Hutang here is a noun. It's actually the past participle from the root hu. Let me call up iPad again. Sorry, short u. So the root hu means to sacrifice, rather like the root yaj also means to sacrifice, but hu in the older language more specifically had the idea of a burnt offering as opposed to yaj, which was much more of a general form of sacrifice, according to my understanding. And the past participle is hutta. So hutta can be an adjective meaning sacrificed, that which is sacrificed. In other words, that which is put into the fire as part of the sacrificial burnt offering. It can also, like certain past participles, mean be a noun, like a verbal noun. We saw earlier the jitta means as a past participle meaning conquered, but it can also be a noun meaning conquest. So hutang here means a sacrifice. Vasasatang hutang, you can interpret vasasatang as an adjective meaning 100-year long sacrifice, 100-year sacrifice, or it can be an adverb of time. It is better than hutang sacrificing vasasatang for 100 years. It boils down to the same thing, but there are two different grammatical interpretations of it. So I'll recap. So pause for a moment to try and get my grid lines back. Don't know why it's done this. Oh, sorry, I got the grid lines back as soon as I switched on. They disappeared again. Oh well. So mase sahasena yoyajeta satang samam. So yoyajeta, if anyone or whoever sacrifices, if anyone were to sacrifice, mase month in, month out, sahasena, yoyajeta sahasena, whoever sacrifices by 1,000, meaning doing 1,000 times more or offering 1,000 times more per sacrifice than would be valid to make to make the sacrifice effective. So he does that 1,000 times over. Satang samam, 400 interpret years. Samang, regularly, evenly, just carrying on regularly without stopping. Ekancha bhavitatanam muhuttamapi pujaye. And pujaye, if he were to reverence, muhuttamapi, even for a moment, ekancha bhavitatanam, one person of developed self, sayeva pujana, that act of reverencing, that very act of reverencing, seyo is better, yanche, than vasasatang hutang, which, as I said, can mean either sacrificing, then adverb of time 400 years, or than 100-year long, 100-year sacrifice, meaning 100-year long sacrifice. Oh, I haven't explained Bhavitatanam. The explanation of that is we have Bhavita root bhu to be, In Sanskrit, bhavayati, to cause to be, literally, to bring into being. And Pali, bhaveti. So literally, to cause to be, bring into being. And then in the sense of the spiritual path, it is, sorry, so I just can't get this to center on the screen. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The path, it has the idea of developing yourself. So causing, bringing something into being, or causing it to be more than it is the literal meaning of bhavayati, bhaveti. If you are bhavita, you are developed in a spiritual sense, cultivated, worked on it, developed it. Atta, Sanskrit Atman, oneself. If you are bhavitata, you have you one who has developed oneself, developed self, one whose self is developed. That's a bahuvrihi compound, a possessive compound. So bhavita atta, one whose self is developed, and the accusative forms, that is bhavita tanam. Um, this Pali word atta, in Sanskrit atman, going back to the Sanskrit, this is a masculine noun, consonantal declension, the stem is an. If you get a masculine noun ending in an an, or the stem an, it makes its accusative an anam. So atmanam. And the same happens where it's the last member of a compound. So in Sanskrit, a person of a developed atman, who, with a developed self, would be in the stem form bhavitatman, and in the accusative bhavitatmanam. And that is what gives us the Pali bhavitatanam. Note that in Pali, where you have atta as the last member of a compound, as in bhavitata, accusative, as we've just seen, bhavitatanam. Pali, but not Sanskrit, will also allow it to become. Oh, hang on, sorry. There we are. Can't center this. Pali will also allow it to become a normal declension. So instead of bhavitata, bhavitatanam, Pali will also allow you to have bhavitato, bhavitatam. This, these being the endings, of course, of the akaranta shabda, the words ending in the most common stem ending in a short a. Sanskrit wouldn't allow you to do that. Sanskrit would say, well, the word is atman, consonantal declension, ending in an, where it is the last member of a compound, it will stay that. So bhavitatman, nominative bhavitatma, accusative bhavitatmanam. Pali will allow you to say bhavitata, bhavitatanam, following the Sanskrit, or you can flip it to an at declension, bhavitato, bhavitatam. So I'll just give one last read through this verse then. Mase mase sahasena yo yajeta satang samang sayeva pujana sayo yanche vassa satang hutang. And again, so I'll just pull this up. Mase mase sahasena yo yajeta satang samam ekancha bhavatatanam muhuttamapi pujaye sayeva pujana seyo yanche vassa satang hutang. And that's it on this video.